Today on Ask the First Selectman, John Zagrodzky, our guest, is going to answer your questions, and I'll tell you in a moment how to submit your questions for upcoming episodes. John, Verizon recently suffered a huge blackout over much of the country. How did the police and fire departments handle calls in the absence of cell phone service? And how can we prepare for these kind of communications challenges again in the future?
Yeah, that was an interesting situation. My understanding is that they were doing a combination of a software and hardware upgrade, mostly software. And when they did that, their system got overwhelmed and cascaded into a failure. When you combine that with the fact that people were trying to continue to place calls, once the system got turned back on, it got overwhelmed again simply because of call volume. And so it was a much longer failure than certainly those folks had hoped for. So there's a couple things about that. One of them is that if you have a cell phone that is subscribed to a carrier, say Verizon in this case, and you place a 911 call, the way the systems are supposed to work is that competing systems, even though you don't have a subscription, for example, say AT&T, that they're supposed to pick up that call and relay it. So it's also supposed to work for text messages. So if you have a call or a text to 911, you're on Verizon, that network is down. AT&T or any other network that's operating in that area is supposed to pick it up. So hopefully anybody who placed a 911 call during that time, they were able to get through. I've got no verification that that happened or whether that worked or not, but that's the textbook answer in terms of how it's supposed to function. In terms of preparedness, this is one of those things such as having a power outage. If you lose power, you're just going to have to wait for power to come back on. But things you could do to maybe prepare for this kind of outage. One thing is to consider keeping your landline. I know a lot of folks have gotten rid of their landline, but it is a redundant system. And if you have cell service that goes out, at least you got your landline. I'm guilty of getting rid of my landline as well and haven't had one for years, but that's a source of redundancy. Another thing you could consider is having two different cell providers. So have some family members on one cell carrier and then another phone maybe on another carrier. But those are some ways that you could prepare for it. Apparently, though, Verizon is making some changes, and they, of course, never say never, but they don't expect to have an outage like this again. They have studied what happened and have tried to configure themselves in such a way that this particular problem does not come up again. So hopefully, we will not have it happen again. But if it does, those were a few tips to think about.
If you have a question for our first selectman, just email it to us and we'll ask it on your behalf. Just email us at dariantv@darianct.gov.